Thanks, JC. The next individual I'm going to introduce is Ted Weaver Sr. Ted was a long-time resident of that state south of us, Maryland, that now lives in Spring Mills, West Virginia. He worked in property management and property development for over 20 years. Ted owned and operated an environmental testing company in Martinsburg, West Virginia, and worked as a community development coordinator for the town of Hancock, Maryland. He served as a board member of several nonprofit agencies over the years, including the Exchange Club Child Abuse Prevention Center of Hagerstown. And Ted retired in 2013 and created Responsibly Armed Citizens of America in July of 2012, where he currently serves as the CEO and chairman of the board. Also, as the founder of Responsibly Armed, he is an avid supporter of the Second Amendment and gun rights for all law-abiding citizens. He supports and promotes firearm education, being responsibly armed, national carry for all law-abiding citizens legislation, which is currently being created by Responsibly Armed, which will be presented later this year for consideration in Washington. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ted Weaver.
Would you believe this is the first rally I could bring my own gun? There it is. Anyway, I'm just basically a dumb old country boy. I was raised in Maryland, and it is so good to come to Pennsylvania and see the crowd that we have here. It's good to see people that are wearing their sidearms, and from what I see so far, everyone that has a firearm is a responsibly armed person, which is what we like, because, you know, we don't want to go out and shoot anybody, and we don't want to go out and do crazy things, because whenever you do that, that's a real long day for everybody, you know? So, you know, part of being responsibly armed is knowing when and when not to do things, but the biggest thing that I like about where I'm at right now in life is at my age of 58, I've seen the days when people drove around with shotguns in the back windows of their pickup truck and no one paid any attention to it. I've seen the days in even Maryland that you could have a shotgun in the pickup window of your truck and you go to the mountains in Western Maryland, go deer hunting, it was all good. And more, the Second Amendment is being stomped on. Now, I'm going to also talk about politics a little bit, because being a lifelong resident of Maryland for at least the first 50 years of my life, I really feel bad for these people. And there's some of my Maryland friends here, and they know what they're going through. You know, you wake up one day, you can do something, the next day you wake up, you can't. And that's not right. The Second Amendment clearly says we have the right to bear arms. So that's what we should be doing. We're doing it here today. And I have a Pennsylvania concealed carry permit. I support your state. I have your license. I have one in West Virginia and a couple other states as well. Because you never know where you're not going to be able to get them anymore. So I figure I'm just going to collect them like I do credit cards. So, you know, you got to keep the spirit alive. But recently, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about what's going on in Maryland. I sent an email to one of the delegates that were fighting with this SB 281 bill for the state of Maryland, and he was, you know, pro-gun and everything, and I sent him a letter or by email on Saturday, and I said, I'd really like to talk with you. Give me a yell. Within 10 minutes, and this was at 11 o'clock at night on Saturday last week, he says, call me 24/7. His name is Michael Spiegel. He's a delegate from the Eastern Shore area. And I said, well, it's Easter. I'm not going to bother you. We'll talk Monday. I'll give you a call. Sunday night, Easter night, he sends me another email and he says, Ted, can we talk? I'm available. 11:30 at night, I spent 45 minutes talking to one of the delegates from the state of Maryland, because everything in Maryland with the Second Amendment rights just blew up in a handbasket. And they're looking at me, a dumb old country boy, and they're saying, you know, You have Responsibly Armed. We have a reach of about 660,000 people. We have 3,000 people that actually support our site. We just opened it up to membership, but people are starting to see that what we have put together is an alternative to the NRA, and the NRA is good. I belong to that for years, and I've given them money more than I should have. And it's all good, and it's all about the rights. You know, I look out here in the crowd and I see people that got bigger guns than me, and they're responsible. No one shot me yet, so it's a good day. And politically, here's what I want you guys to do, all of you. I spend about 8 hours a week on the telephone, and I call up every state in the United States, and I said, hi, I'm Ted Weaver. I'm the CEO for Responsibly Armed, and their first thing is, a what? But we're getting there. There's some states that don't ask me that anymore, but I call them up and I say, hey, you know, you guys are voting against the Second Amendment. What I want you to do is consider the Second Amendment as a God-given right. We have the right to bear arms, and as long as we're not idiots and we're not out shooting everybody, who are we hurting? We have that right. And I just want you to know that I support any pro-gun legislation. And what I'd like for you guys to do in Pennsylvania, because Pennsylvania and West Virginia is really a lot alike as far as the gun laws. You know, I can put on my 45 and I can walk into Walmart and get me a dozen donuts, and you know, if you walk in with a big enough gun, you got people in front of you that are saying, hey, after you, you go first. You know, they're the most respectful bunch of people you ever run into. You know, go to a 7-Eleven at 2 o'clock in the morning, you get a cup of coffee wearing a gun. Guess what? Everybody's opening the door for you. You know, they're just nice people. But it's at the point where in West Virginia, and I don't know how it is up here in Pennsylvania, I'm not here that much, but I support your state and I support the politics and the fact that they recognize your Second Amendment rights. But what I would like for you to do tomorrow, Monday, whenever, call up the people that are in your government system that is pro-gun and say, hey, I'm John Doe. I exercise my Second Amendment rights, and I want you to know I appreciate that. Most of my phone calls are exactly the opposite. I'm telling everybody what horrible and ugly people they are to infringe on my rights, and why should I have to jump through all these hoops and spend all this money to get taxed, get registered, just so I can do what I should be able to do that I did when I was 8 years old and go hunting with a .30-30 Winchester and shoot deer at 12 years old, and no one paid any attention to you. And it's, you know, it's at the point that they make us look like we're the bad guys, and we're not the bad guys. You know, we're basically down to earth, everyday people who exercise our rights. But now I want to bounce back to Maryland a little bit. The interesting thing about Maryland is now that the SB 281 legislation has been approved. Martin O'Malley's happy. There's been thousands and thousands of people down in Annapolis protesting this. We unfortunately have gotten to a point in time in our country that the constituents are no longer important. If you get voted into office and you have your agenda, it doesn't matter what everybody out here wants. It doesn't matter what we think. It doesn't matter what we believe in. If their agenda is what they want, that's what they're going to give us. I just recently, well, in fact, it was last night at about midnight, I got copies of the SB 281 bill, and it's on my Facebook page of how every representative voted. And I put a note on there. I said, please print this and hold on to it. When the election comes up again, these are the people you want to make sure you don't vote for. And Responsibly Armed is going to be in the tri-state area, and we're going to make it known to everybody possible that this guy and this guy and this guy is the bad guy. We don't want to vote for them because, remember, they were against your rights. So we're going to do what we can to keep on going with the Second Amendment rights. And, you know, the concept behind Responsibly Armed was simply this. Last July, we had a mass shooting in a movie theater. And I was the last one to know about it. I was working at the office, and I came home and my neighbors were waiting on me. And they said, "See what those guns do?" And I looked at my gun and I said, "Well, it hasn't did anything. What do they do?" And of course, they got upset with me. They called me a couple choice words, and they went and slammed the door and went in. So a couple days later, I went to that same neighbor and I said, "Let me ask you a question." I said, "If somehow, some way, some night, God forbid, I hear you screaming to the top of your lungs, you being anti-gun and against guns and against the Second Amendment and everything else," I said, "what would you really rather me do? Dial 911 for you? Or would you like me to get one of my so-called guns and come over and help you out?" And she said, "Oh my," she says, "Ted, you would," she says, "I trust you. I would want you to come over and help me." And I said, "I'm no different than anybody else. Even the strangers here that are carrying guns, I trust them. I trust anybody that has a gun. It's our right. It's like our right to walk around in freedom. It's that simple, folks, and we're losing it. Maryland has already lost it. I don't know if we're going to be able to change that. They're talking about going to referendum. We're talking with attorneys. I don't know how many people here are familiar with Roscoe Bartlett, the congressman from Maryland of 20 years. He's on my board of directors. He is working with me. Blaine Young is another good friend of mine. He's running for governor of Maryland. If Blaine Young is elected to become the next governor of Maryland, Responsibly Armed will be at the table helping to instrument responsible gun laws and writing them and the training programs and so forth. But we are just so lucky here in Pennsylvania because you recognize these rights. And please call up your legislators and your political people and thank them. You know, the technology is so great today, you don't even have to do it really. You can call up on the weekend and get an answering machine. That's when I like to do it. Or you can send an email. That's even easier yet. And all the NRA sites have all these click here and it shoots an email to them instantly. So it's not hard. But the thing that happened in Maryland was everybody was jumping up and down saying, "I appreciate the guns. I want to, I stand up for the Second Amendment. I want my rights." Now that they passed SB 281, they are crawling out of the woodwork because no one made the phone call, no one sent the email. So folks, if we continue to do nothing, we're going to get nothing. If anything, they're going to take things away from us. So, look at where you are in life, look at what you want to do in life, but for God's sakes, people, don't let them take our Second Amendment. Don't let them take anything, because I want to share one other story. I have a friend of mine who supports Responsibly Armed. He's around here taking pictures. I hope he's getting some good ones of me this time. But anyway, he took a picture at the last rally that we had in Hagerstown, the 223 rally that I spoke at. And he came up with this picture, and it was a woman that she was probably in her maybe mid to later 20s. She had a small child in a backpack that was on her back. She had 3 other little girls, and the background was so unique because it just would remind you of someone in the ghettos that was poor and so forth. But she didn't have a gun. She didn't own a gun. And she had this really, and I thought it was an ugly sign. I mean, it was handmade, but it was ugly. And it said, "Protect our freedoms." And then at the bottom of it, and she had drawn a picture of a gun. It must have been a Glock because it was an ugly gun, but anyway. Just kidding. Don't take it personal. But anyway, what happened was, at the bottom of it, she says, "Lock up the criminals." Folks, that's all the harder it is. Take care of the laws that we got. Enforce the laws that we have. If I go out there acting like an idiot, waving my 45 cig around, You know, if someone don't call the cops and get me locked up, you missed your opportunity. But there's no one doing that. Guns are a serious responsibility, and I tell people on my website and on my Facebook, guns are not for everybody. I've had people go to the range with me, and I'm all the time inviting people to the range. And even if you never shot before, I'll let you come up and I'll let you shoot my bullets and I'll let you play with my guns, because I want you to understand, whether you're for or against guns, to know what a gun is and what it can do and what its limits are. If you don't understand a gun, you don't like them. And I got a reply for that. If you don't like them, don't buy them. It's just that easy, you know? And I'm sure you've all heard that before. But you have to understand things before you condemn them. We are living in a nation now that if people don't understand it, it's easier to condemn it. And if you're the people that are for these things, it's easier to wait until the guy next door calls up and says thank you, or I'm against it, and so on and so forth. So we all have to take our own responsibilities. We need to act. Even if you got what you want, call them up. And the other thing is, I have people from all over the United States that are on my organization and support us. I got people from Spain, Canada, Argentina. I have people from Russia, believe it or not. I got 4 people supporting me from Russia. I have no idea what they're saying, but they're there. And I have from Thailand. I have from the United Kingdom, a very avid group of supporters. And they're looking at the United States and they're saying, you guys are just so lucky. But every day we're in for the battle of our life. Even if it's going our way, don't take for granted it's going to be there next year. You know, you got to keep this fight going, and you've got to keep fighting for the rights. And a real neat thing is, I have been told off several times on my own Facebook page, and that's usually fun. And yet I leave those remarks on because, number one, who am I to want the Second Amendment rights if I take and put a little X on those people that don't agree with me and wipe them off the website? So if you go onto my Facebook page, and if you go back far enough, you're going to see where I got some really good tongue lashings from people. But I tell you, the thing that happened the first time I was assaulted online, there was 75 people that came to my rescue, and I never had to say a word. And these people took up for the Second Amendment and my rights quicker than I could. But one thing I'm going to do before I leave is, I explained to you earlier about the picture of the young lady with the 4 girls. I had another vision of that same scene. Now try to create in your mind a young lady, 3 young girls, one in her back. She's holding a sign saying, "Keep my freedoms and lock up the criminals." I'm going to leave you with this parting vision. Imagine that same very picture that I just described on the day that the Second Amendment rights no longer exist. At that point in time, my friends, that sign will be held by the same woman, only it's going to read something different. And it's going to say, I get choked up over this. It's going to say, "Dear God, we are no longer free." Think about it. If you lose the Second Amendment rights, you've lost your freedom. Thank you so much. I'm going to have one of my board members, his name is Jim Woods. He's a little more technical than I am and uses some better words than I do, but I want him to speak for just a few brief minutes. But sincerely, check us out on the website, www.responsiblyarmed.org. We also are on Facebook, Responsibly Armed. Thank you. You've been very gracious and nice. Thank you to the Patriot 912 organization for inviting us. Thank you.
Well, Well, Americans, patriots, good to see you all out here. First of all, let me say that I've noticed all of the guns, and unlike the people in Washington, D.C., I feel extremely safe. I don't know why they're so cowardly. JC, thank you for your service to the country. I served as well. God bless you. My remarks are going to be very limited, ladies and gentlemen. On the building above me, you will notice virtue, liberty, independence. Without virtue, you cannot have liberty. Without liberty, there is no independence. Sir Edmund Burke once made the statement, and I won't get it exactly, but I will paraphrase it. He said, "All that is needed for evil to prosper is for good men to stand by and do nothing." At 61 years of age with 4 grandchildren, I should be able to stay in my home and live a comfortable life, loving my children and my family. But instead, I'm willing to die. Yes, JC, I am willing to die to preserve this country, not just for myself, for my children and for my grandchildren, but for yours. And for every child that will come for generations to come. That's the kind of dedication it's going to take. This is our country. It belongs to us. It does not belong to them. If they want it, come and take it.